What's a knockout like you doing in a computer-generated gin joint like this?
Waiting for you.
Waiting for me? You can't be serious.
Oh, yes, Will. I've never been more serious in my life.
The Zulu people say, ulwazi luvela olwandle. The knowledge comes from the sea. Our people believe that many centuries ago, a race of intelligent creatures of various kinds chaperoned the human race into this world in which we are in exile. And members of this race went into the sea to become what we today call dolphins, amahlengetho. Over the centuries, dolphins and whales sent knowledge via dreams to human beings. The whales told us all about God. The dolphins told us all about wisdom and art and other forms of positive creativity. We black people believe that these dolphins are not fishes. They are amahlengetho, the saviors. They are people. They have a kingdom under the sea. They have stories that they tell to their children. And they have hopes for the future. We say that they came with their great emperor Wowane from the star called Sirius by the white people many millennia ago.
In our elliptical orbit, if there's the sun, our Earth will be like, in its orbit, it will be like here, closer to the sun, 4 million miles, by the way, and it has nothing to do with summer or winter. That the Earth being closer to the sun down here in July the 4th, January the 4th, perihelion, that has got nothing to do with the temperature. Nothing at all. That's the tilt. Okay? So this is perihelion and this is aphelion. Aphelion is here. July the 4th. You know, when you get all your Independence Days. All countries around the world celebrate, whether it's Canada, you know, Venezuela, whatever, many countries around the world have their independence over here because the sun is conjuncting Sirius. Sirius is the one who gives independence and freedom. She is the Statue of Liberty. It's Sirius, the mother of the system. She dominates the whole star system that we're in.
Let's draw more lines. Yeah, we draw also these two. Now we get 12 different parts. And these are of course the eons or the ages. So we're now about to enter the period of Aquarius, the age of Aquarius. And at the other side we find the eon of Leo. And the clock of Giza is all about this third dimension of time, about the great year. So what the pyramids builders did was show us this great year. And they gave us a lot of clue that they didn't build it by accident. There's a lot of symmetrical relationships inside. When we draw a line from this corner to the bottom of the Sphinx, it goes straight to the middle of the lowest, bigger pyramids. By doing so, we divide the full circle into 1/3 and the other one is 2/3. So that means that this is a side of a perfect triangle. Here we see it. And the other perfect triangle starts in the top pyramid, in the northeast corner of the biggest pyramid, of the Great Pyramid. So this is a very ancient symbol. It's a symbol, the seal of Salomo. It's very beautiful that it's present on the Gizeh Plateau. And why is that? Because it's a clock. And the clock goes this way, goes counterclockwise. And the full circle is nearly 26,000 years. This is the moment Leo started. Then it became dark. And this is the moment where Aquarius will start. Then it will be light. So this is the dark period, half a circle, and then a half a circle, a light period. What did they do? To help us remind us about this, to help us interpret this clock, they built the Sphinx, the Great Sphinx. What does it mean? This is the body of Leo, of a lion, with the head of Aquarius. That is what we see here. It's very obvious, but we didn't see it for thousands of years.
On this representation of the great dolphin Vundu are marks which detail important things that are to be found in space. Suns and worlds which breed living things. The wise ones of our people, the Sanusis, tell us that all these designs are messages from the gods of the stars to us human beings. This here is the most sacred constellation in the sky, namely Umzingeli. It is the constellation that white people call Orion, which some African tribes call Anansi. A Ndingiro is a craft in which the star gods travel. These are words that one must say when one opens channels of communication between oneself and the stars. They are symbols of the goddess that one must think about when one thinks about the stars. A goddess whose image we must bear in our minds. The goddess Nanana. These designs represent various worlds and stars which were once our heritage in the cosmos. However, we will not find this world because we ourselves destroyed it many millennia ago.
So what does it actually mean? This is a moment in time. What moment in time? How can we precisely know what moment it was? To help us find that exactly right moment, we have to look at the shafts in the Great Pyramid. And those shafts are aligned to certain stars. It's aligned, of course, to Sirius, the dance partner of Helios. It's aligned to the lowest star in the belly of Orion, and Orion's belt. Sorry, belly belt. And these two stars also. We first saw Tuban. We saw in the previous part, Tuban is on the circle of the precession, and also this one is related to the precession cycle. So the pyramid builders chose 4 stars to help us remind about the precession cycle. That's why they did it. The only thing we have to do now is to find the exact moment in time when those stars were perfectly aligned with the shafts inside the Great Pyramid, from the King's Chamber and the Queen's Chamber. And that moment, according to my calculation, is 2309 BC. So we know that this moment is nearly 2300 BC. We just go back in time. We'll do that later. These three pyramids represent, everybody knows that because of the work of Robert Bauval, represent the stars in the belly, in the belt of Orion. And that's exactly what we see. We see here 3 stars horizontal. Yeah, they are horizontal here. What does that mean? That means that the stars of Orion in the belly, in the belt, were rising horizontally. And that was around 11,000 BC. Yeah, we saw them nearly all the same time rising above the horizon. So when we go back 2 times this period, 4,320 years, then we come here. 10,949 BC. That was the moment here. That is when Leo started. So that means that after a period, we are now here. After nearly 13,000 years. This is what we should see now. And that is true. When we take a picture of Orion rising, we see these formation. First one, this rises, then the second one, and then the third one. So that means that this is the current time. And that will be 2012. That is the moment when we hit the light period again, when we go to the age or the eon of Aquarius. So we had 13,000 years of darkness, and then we will have again 13,000 years of light. And that is the message of the pyramid builders. In 2012, the great year spring will start, bringing a bright new day. And that is why all the dark systems we have now, the money system, the control system, all the divide and conquer is going on, all those things will disappear. We will make a full new start. We will reinvent everything and we'll start a new way of living on this planet.
This is the Black family tree. My deranged cousin. I hated the lot of them. My parents with their pure blood mania. My mother did that after I ran away. Charming woman. I was 16.
Where did you go?
Your dad's. I was always welcome at the Potters. I see him so much in you, Harry. You are so very much alike.
I'm not so sure. Sirius, when I saw Mr. Weasley attacked, I wasn't just watching. I was the snake. And afterwards in Dumbledore's office, there was a moment when I wanted to... This connection between me and Voldemort. What if the reason for it is that I am becoming more like him? I just feel so angry all the time. And what if after everything that I've been through, something's gone wrong inside me? What if I'm becoming bad?
I want you to listen to me very carefully, Harry. You're not a bad person. You're a very good person who bad things have happened to. You understand? Besides, the world isn't split into good people and Death Eaters. We've all got both light and dark inside of us. What matters is the part we choose to act on. That's who we really are.
Harry, time to go.
When all this is over, we'll be a proper family. We'll see.
Many are the mysteries of Africa. Many the mysteries of my country. Many, many are the stories that are yet to be told, and many more those that will never be told.
May corn, wine, and oil, and all the necessaries of life abound among the people of the world. And may this building be continued and preserved to the latest ages.
What do these things really signify? Could it be an occult ceremony representing some sort of demonic conspiracy, as some suggest? Or is it merely a harmless practice to honor an ancient tradition? To investigate these things, we first review the beliefs of the secret societies that came to America. It is clear that the arcane symbolism in Washington, D.C. begins with them.
When you want to talk about symbols and what they mean, you really have to look at who's authored these symbols, what was their intentions.
Well, I think it's obvious that anybody who has the eyes to see can see that Washington, D.C., and indeed many other state capitals are festooned with occult symbols.
Because these symbols come from the esoteric realm, it is important to define them according to the thinking of occult philosophers.
Symbols reveal and they conceal, and that's why they're used and that's why they're so important. They reveal to those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, and they conceal from those who do not have the eyes to see or ears to hear.
In the book, Masonic and Occult Symbols Illustrated, we find this quote from Masonic author Charles G. Berger, who says that symbols came to have two meanings, the esoteric and the exoteric. The esoteric meaning was the true or original meaning, understood only by a few and closely guarded by them. The exoteric meaning was the invented or modified explanation intended for the many. This practice dates back to ancient Egypt and is explained by Dr. Robert Hieronymus, a member of a secret society called Co-Masonry, and author of the book Founding Fathers, Secret Societies.
As with all secret societies, you have levels, and if you're on the lower levels, you don't even know they're upper levels. They don't even tell you. You bump into it by accident or someone comes along. Now, in Scottish Rite, that's something different, because they know that there's a... But before then, and basically secret societies, such as, let's go to ancient Egypt. To the ancient Egyptians, the priest would tell the serfs, the guys that tilled the land, they would say, the sun is God, okay? And so they accepted that very low-level interpretation, all physical. That's not what the priests believed. But the priests believed there was a second level. The priests believed that, nope, the physical sun is not the supreme being, it's the spirit which flows through the physical sun that is the supreme deity. However, there was another level, and the priests didn't even know it. It's those that were involved and elevated to if I would have told you this 15 years ago, I might have gotten shot. But this is now, I'm so glad now that this is easy to talk about. The third level, which was a higher level of understanding, said, nope, it's not, that's not the sun. The sun is not the supreme deity. Nope, yes, spiritual energies come through the sun. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the star Sirius.
The dog star.
The dog star, because the dog star was everything to the ancient Egyptians.
Sirius is said to have been the most important star in the ancient world. It was considered the brightest star in the heavens, many times brighter than the sun. The Great Pyramid was built to synchronize with Sirius, so that the light of this star would shine into the queen's chamber, supposedly to cast a beam upon an initiate during a ritual.
Sirius is considered to be the dog star. It's considered to be the most evil star in the Egyptian pantheon. And the reason for this is because in ancient Egypt they depended on the Nile. And during the time when Sirius is in its ascendancy, which is in late July and early August, was the time of drought. It was a time when the Nile was at its most weak in terms of being able to be used for crops. And so the Egyptians thought this was a time of blasted blight, drought, and evil.
Interesting thing about all Freemasonry is symbolism is ultimately very important. They don't put a lodge in the east because it's a nice place and it looks good. They put it in the east. The masters have put it in the east, so because
It's the rising sun.
It's the rising sun. You're catching the energies of the light.
As Dr. Hieronymus revealed earlier, the real light shining in the east for the Egyptians was not merely the sun, but the light of the dog star, Sirius, which some believe holds a more sinister implication.
This dog star also has relations to the idea of modern-day ceremonial magic and modern-day masonry.
This was especially true for 20th century occultist and Freemason Aleister Crowley, who openly practiced ceremonial magic and was a member of a secret order called the Order of the Silver Star. The Silver Star was a reference to Sirius.
Masons teach that at the center of every Masonic lodge there's a five-pointed star right underneath the altar upon which the candidate is obligated. But the thing is, what they don't tell you is that five-pointed star represents Sirius, which is regarded as a satanic symbol.
There is perhaps no symbol that evokes occult suspicion like the figure of the pentagram, which from ancient times was associated with the dog star Sirius. Masonic philosopher Albert Pike wrote that Sirius still glitters in our lodges as the blazing star. The blazing star is an ancient Gnostic term for Sirius, and as shown here is symbolized in Freemasonry by the five-pointed star or pentagram. According to Pike, this symbol in Masonry dates back to the pentalpha of the Greek philosopher Pythagoras. The pentalpha gets its name for the 5 alphas or Greek letter A's which make up its composition.
Typically in Freemasonry you see the five-pointed star with the nose point down. Now there's even a division in Masonry which considers this the evil side of Freemasonry as opposed to the non-evil side. For example, Freemasonic lodges in New York do not use the nose side down star. They turn it around so the nose is pointing up, and they consider that a good variety of Freemasonry.
Here is an upright Masonic star, which is another type of the blazing star mentioned earlier. Some believe this representation of Sirius may be the origin of the 5-pointed stars which adorn the American flag, as well as the stars that adorn the Statue of Freedom on top of the U.S. Capitol. Incredibly, these same 5-pointed stars were carved by Freemasons into the ceiling of Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland more than 500 years ago. Because Sirius is said to arise in the east, it also became known as the Eastern Star. To the Egyptians, Sirius was identified with the dog god Anubis, which is where the name Dog Star comes from. Anubis was said to have guarded the gates of death and was the protector of mysteries. Meanwhile, the Romans recognized Sirius as Janitor Letheus, or the Keeper of Hell. These dark associations may be the reason for the sometimes grim view of Sirius and the 5-pointed star that represents it. But Sirius was also associated with the Egyptian goddess Isis, and here, as we connect the dots, a more complete picture begins to emerge. For the Egyptians, the rising of Sirius in the east preceded the annual flooding of the Nile River, which for them was a magical event. It was also the time that the goddess Isis would appear and give birth to Horus, the divine child of the Egyptian Trinity. The all-seeing eye is also called the Eye of Horus, and in Freemasonry, Horus symbolizes the Masonic concept of a Christ. This is further represented by the hieroglyph used to denote Sirius. Notice the 3 symbols, an obelisk, a star, and a half circle. According to Egyptologists, the half circle is used to denote what is called the benben, or the capstone used to top the pyramids. Throughout all history, it has been said that the capstone to the Great Pyramid of Egypt has been missing, which is why the all-seeing eye of Horus floats in its place above the pyramid on the back of the dollar bill. According to occult philosophers, the light which illuminates the eye comes not from the sun, but from the dog star Sirius, as is demonstrated by this illustration of the blazing star of Masonry, centered by an all-seeing eye. As Robert Balville writes, in many esoteric traditions, the return of the capstone of the Great Pyramid will signal the return of the Great Initiate, which, according to many prophecies, signifies the return of the Christ. Albert Pike describes the Masonic Trinity as expressed through Sirius and the symbols that are seen in most all Masonic halls. Notice this image with the sun on one side and the moon on the other, while the all-seeing eye sits in between with light blazing behind it. Pike writes that the sun and moon represent the 2 grand principles, the male and the female. Both shed their light upon their offspring, the blazing star, or Horus.
If we have a good look at our solar system and how it works, for instance, the moon goes around the Earth in turn is rotating and orbiting the sun. So it takes 365 days to go around the sun. Now our sun in turn is orbiting Sirius. Sirius being the brightest star in the sky and in the sector of Cancer, right near Gemini. It is in a binary with our star. And every 24,000 years we go around each other in a clockwise motion. Sirius and our sun have been going away from each other for the last couple of thousand years, and now they've turned the corner, so they're heading towards one another. As we reach the outer limits of that orbit, that elliptical orbit with our sun and Sirius, this is where the Iron Age is. The Golden Age is when they are close to each other, and then as they separate, they go through the Silver and the Bronze to the Iron Age. Well, that affects the consciousness of mankind. because we have 100% consciousness when the two stars are close to each other. The consciousness falls to 75%, 50% and 25%. We've not enjoyed full consciousness for a long time, and many of the gifts and abilities and powers that we once had. As we have turned the corner in the great orbit of our two suns, Sirius and our sun, as we have turned the corner and they are hurtling towards each other now, we have turned the corner from the dark ages. We've come out of the dark period because the suns have been pulled apart and their influence is weakened, and therefore our consciousness has dropped, and we're in the dark ages. Now they're pulling towards each other, bringing us to a higher consciousness, and that's nature. Nature brings us, ascends, helps us, and carries us through the ascension process. So it's all loving. Even though there's chaos and there's fear and anguish and chaotic events occurring around us in our world, even though that is happening, that's really just the remnants of the dark ages. So we've turned the corner. The two suns are hurtling towards each other at great speeds now, and that's the beautiful part of where we are. We've turned the corner, so we're really in just a great time in history to be living. It's just an amazing time. The great changes that we will see with our own eyes will just be stupendous. There's Sirius, and there's our sun, and we have an elliptic orbit, right, that we go around. Sirius also does this, like that. So there's our sun, and our Earth is going around anti-clockwise like that in its orbit. And so this would be, here would be perihelion. And here, so here the sun would be in Capricorn, and here the sun would be in Cancer. So you see what's happening is because these two stars are flying towards each other. And by the way, Sirius is hurtling towards us at 12 miles a second. She's flying towards us, man. And with that Sirius B going around it. And every time Sirius B goes around, there's havoc on the Earth. Havoc. And she's hurtling towards us. So her speed coming, she's blue shifted now, because for 12,000 years, Sirius has been observed to be red, right? When she turned the corner and they're hurtling towards each other, what's happening now is the sun is being pulled up, and of course it leaves all this drag, which is this drag here. Right? Because when the sun is in Sirius, when the sun is heading towards Sirius, and it's in that sign, it's being pulled up. That's the drag. In the book of Daniel of the Bible, it says that in this time many will come to an accurate knowledge of the truth, and they will whiten their robes, and they will turn to the truth. But it also mentions that many will just go off into the darkness and continue on the path of darkness. The more one loves and finds unity in this world and harmony, the more the blessings will be when that time comes. All shall benefit on different levels. Even the unawakened will benefit, because that's how the universe elevates souls.
Thomas Jefferson said, "No country and no people can remain free and ignorant at the same time." Nobody's going to be free or ignorant. You can either be ignorant and stupid or you can be free. You can't be both. Which brings me to my subject, the root of all religions. I find it to be amazing that so many people in this country give lip service to God. They talk about God, they talk about the presence of the Almighty, and have no concept in the world where the word God comes from. Have no concept in the world where the theological ideas and concepts have come from in the Western civilization. God is simply the word dog spelled backwards. This is why our churches have dogma. You need to understand that God, the root word for God coming out of Europe, is Goth in German, G-O-T-H, which gives us Gothic cathedrals, Gothic architecture. That's German for God. In Scandinavia, the word is not Goth, it's gut, G-U-T. So when you say, I got a gut feeling, it's like God's telling me something. Its gut is Scandinavian for God. You go back to the word God. As I said, God is dog spelled backwards. Why? Because in the ancient Egyptian religion, the most powerful divine being in all of Egypt was Osiris. And Osiris said that the gods who came from the star system of Osiris, or the star system of Sirius, came to this earth. This was the teachings of the ancient Egyptians, that the gods, aliens if you please, came from another world called Sirius, and they came here and set up a divine arrangement in Egypt. And this is where we get the word sir. Yes, sir, comes from Sirius, Osiris. And today we know that Sirius is called the dog star. So when you begin to look at the movies, television, and research these subjects for many years, you begin to see how words and terms and symbols are being used to manipulate our thinking. And again, I ask, how important is it really to know the truth? In Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, he is in his classroom at the beginning of the movie. And he is saying to his class that if you are looking for the truth, you are in the wrong room. That's down the hall and to the left. That's religion philosophy department. He said, I am an archaeologist, I'm looking for facts, not truth. Because what's true to one person may not be true to another. So only if truth is founded on facts can you begin to build a life. And again, if you're hanging by the belief in something which is untrue, somewhere along the line it's going to bring you trouble. So when you understand that there is an ancient lineage of theology and religion that connects to government, because in the ancient world, kings and rulers were always occupied two different positions at the same time. Ancient kings were always, of course, the head of the kingdom, but they also were the communication with the gods. So consequently, whatever the king did, he had a divine right because he was in with the gods. We still have such things today. We still have such people today who think that they have a God-given right to rule over the human family. Somewhere along the line, I believe there's going to come a time when the divine presence in the universe that we call God is going to show itself. And when it does, it's not going to be like anything you've ever anticipated. It is my belief that we have not even come to know God. We have not even come to come near to understanding the implications of what is in the Bible.
Sirius is the brightest star in the sky, and it's been a special star to virtually every ancient culture. I think right here where we are in Hopi land, they called it the blue Kachina, and the ancient Egyptians referred to it as Isis, which is their #1 god. So it's sort of a magical star from a myth and folklore standpoint, but we've been investigating it from a scientific standpoint, and it has some amazing traits there also. For example, it is the heaviest star in our local neighborhood. The Sirius system, it actually has another little star that goes around it itself called Sirius B.
Mm-hmm.
And together it's about 3 solar masses. So on one of those big Einstein grids, it would be the heavy point, which lends some credence to our idea that our system may go around that, although we still have the classical Newtonian problems. But both from a myth and folklore standpoint and from a scientific standpoint, it seems to have some characteristics that make it look like a companion. I mean, heck, if the brightest star in the sky is our sun, the second brightest star would have a good chance of being our companion. It's been called the dog, the hound, the fox, the wolf, which is, it's all a dog-like character that seems to run across the sky. And indeed, if it was the companion star, it would move relative to other stars. It could be that it always points to Sirius. And this goes against conventional thinking about precession. Precession theory is now that all stars move across the sky at roughly the same rate, 50 arc seconds, due to a wobbling Earth. But if we are indeed in a companion star system, a binary system, there would be one star that would stay relatively the same in comparison to Earth coordinates and yet move across the sky. And there's some, it's just some interesting comments about Sirius over the years, that it's just not moving very much. The ancient Egyptians, used it to keep time. And so it looks like this tiny little shaft, which really only points to about 1 or 2 degrees of sky during the whole precession cycle. So that's 70, 100, 120 years, something like that. Why would they point it to that star during our lifetime?
For us now.
It's like we're on opposite sides of a merry-go-round. So,
yes.
So we, the 2 horses on the merry-go-round, always stay the same in relationship to each other, whereas everything in the background goes by. According to classical Newtonian mechanics and the speed that we believe our solar system is moving, in order to get around Sirius and back, it would take over 1 million years. And this is why we so thoroughly explored the dark star scenario in Lost Star Myth and Time, the brown dwarf or black hole idea that, if we are in this binary system, that it should be fairly close. It should be actually only about 1/10 of a light year away in order to get around it in 24,000 years. So, so I don't bring this up with astronomers, astrophysicists very often, but there's a building body of evidence that indicates not only are we gravitationally bound to this star, but that the whole solar system might be going a lot faster than we thought it was. Ancient cultures all over the world believed in this vast cycle of time with a golden age at one end and a dark age at the other, one precession of the equinox, one eon, one great year that Plato or the Chinese called it. And there's so many references from so many disparate cultures that you have to start to take it seriously. And indeed, when we do look at the archaeological record, we find tremendous amount of evidence of very advanced civilizations in the past. In Mesopotamia, you know, Sumer declines to Akkad, declines to Babylon, declines to dust. Egypt, same thing, it's near its height and goes to dust. And virtually every other culture around the world, including, you know, Rome and the Chinese Han Dynasty are falling about the same time as the Mayan are crumbling over here in the Americas. And then we have this dreadful Dark Age. I mean, it was getting bad on the way in. And then we're sort of coming out of it now, you know, with a Renaissance, a rebirth, and a cycle up. So they all seem to tie it to this precession of the equinox. They keep saying something about the movement of the stars has something to do with it, and one star in particular. And so that's what's really pushed myself and our group to dig into this, to find out what astronomical phenomena actually is driving this rise and fall of the ages, and how does that work. Swami Sri Yukteswar wrote this book in 1894 and said that there's another point, and it's the binary orbit that brings us closer to that other point. And some have called that the seat of Brahma, some the grand magnetic center, the central sun. There's all sorts of little references to it throughout history. And some have said it's the Pleiades. And so that Bible quote is one of my favorites, in that it's possible that as we move in this binary system, now and then, in this 24,000-year cycle, we get close to the Pleiades. It has this sweet influence upon us. And then as the binary system moves us away, we have a less of that sweet influence, and we go into the darker ages. The low point of the Dark Ages we put around 500 AD or so. And so then 1,000 years after the low point, along comes Copernicus, who resurrects it. And I just read a book on Copernicus, the book that nobody read. It's about De Revolute Omnibus. And he had 5 books in his possession. 3 of them were old Greek books. And so Copernicus was resurrecting ancient knowledge. You know, today, if you write a scientific paper, come out with a new theory, you will quote things that came 2 years before, 3 years before, 5 or 10 years before. You don't go back 2,000 years
Right.
for the basis of your theories. You know, I get the question all the time, okay, so we're in a binary system, you know, what's that mean to me here and
Right.
now? And I think it means a lot. We hear so much nowadays about the expansion of consciousness that's going on. And if technology is a proxy, you know, our sheer inventiveness shows you that consciousness is expanding. And there's been 3 or 4 books just come out in the last few years that compare physical reality to virtual reality or matrix or a dream or a holograph. And there just seems to be more and more people that are very conscious, channeling, psychic, you know, able to move this physical reality with their intention and thought and will. And I see it related. I see this as a part of the ascending age that, as a matter of fact, the rishis and Yukteswar and others talked about this, that as we move from the Dark Ages, where we only believe everything is solid and we're just flesh and bones and nothing more, we come into just the first age up, the Dwapara Yuga, where we start to get an understanding of finer forces, and sure enough, we start to realize things are made out of molecules, those are made out of atoms, those are made out of protons, neutrons, electrons, and it's looking like those are made out of energy. And we're realizing more and more, I think, that we are energy. And so it's all connected. Yes, there's a very positive growth in consciousness right now. And sure, we can affect that with our own free will, and you know, those people that do things to tune in can go faster than the norm. But but it's almost like the Creator himself just is lifting up the whole world right now to some degree.
Can you begin by sharing with us why have the stars of Orion and Sirius been so important over time to many different cultures and since very ancient times on our planet?
They really are critical stars, and I think a huge part of that is because of their connection to the meaning of the precessional cycle that ancient advanced cultures were very aware of. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that today, how that relates specifically to Sirius and Orion, and how the energies of the sky as well as the earth are supporting us in this profound time of transformation that we're in as we're moving into higher consciousness. So in ancient Egypt, there was also that understanding of Nut, the sky goddess, who is the source of all of life and the other gods. She is associated with the Milky Way, which also holds our view of the galactic center. That dark rift in the Milky Way is our view of the source of our galaxy. But in particular today, I want to talk about the importance of Sirius, the brightest star in our sky, and Orion. And these stars are really important and were profoundly meaningful in ancient Egypt, but you also find them in myths and stories from cultures around the globe. And it is because of their relationship with the precessional cycle. The precessional cycle was deeply understood in ancient Egypt and other advanced ancient cultures. And it is that understanding, if you monitor our relationship with the sky and look at, for example, what stars are rising here in the Northern Hemisphere at the time of the spring equinox, you'll see that over a prolonged period of time, the stars of the ecliptic will move from one constellation to the next, shifting 1 degree every 72 years, such that in about a 2,000-year period, we move from one constellation being prominent at that time before sunrise at spring equinox to the next, and they move backwards through the signs. But what's significant is they're guiding us in this larger 24,000-year precessional cycle that speaks to the evolution of our consciousness here as humanity on the earth. And the precessional cycle is also associated with the Hindu Yuga cycle, which is this understanding of our movement through this 24,000-year cycle with 12,000 years of the ascending cycle, our ascending consciousness, 12,000 years of descending consciousness. And according to that understanding of the precessional cycle, we are now emerging out of the period called the Kali Yuga, which is the time of forgetting, when we actually lose some of that ancient understanding of who we are, of why we're here. We get caught in this experience of separation and of forgetting, and we are ending that Kali Yuga period at the end of this year and the beginning of 2025 as we're moving into higher consciousness. Again, you know what age you're in terms of that precessional cycle by the stars that are rising before the sun at spring equinox. And this is a look at how the sky was this last spring equinox. And you can see here are the stars of Aquarius rising before the sun. So we are moving into the age of Aquarius. You can also monitor the precessional cycle by how the pole star will shift over time. And we now have Polaris as our pole star. But 12,000 years ago, it was Vega. We know the ending of one precessional cycle and the beginning of a new one by when the sun at the time of winter solstice is in alignment with the center of our galaxy. And that occurred 2012, which was why that year was so important. So we are not only moving into the age of Aquarius, we're at the end of one 24,000-year precession cycle and the beginning of a new one. And ancient cultures who tracked this larger cycle were very aware that the times of the most significant earth changes and shifts in our consciousness come at the beginning of a new cycle, where we are now, and the midpoint, which was 12,000 years ago. What is it that influences this shift in the ages and this 24,000-year precessional cycle? Many people think it relates to the tilt of our Earth's axis that causes that shift in our perspective of the sky. But Walter Cruttenden and others who've done in-depth research, he believes that our sun is a binary star like 80% of the stars in our galaxy. And it's his belief that our binary star guiding us through this journey of evolution is the star Sirius, the brightest star in the sky. So that brings us back to the importance of Sirius and Orion and their relationship with each other, which in ancient Egypt related to the goddess Isis, the great mother, and Osiris, the god who guides us in the journey of life, death, rebirth. So I know, Jocelyn, you know this story very well, but let me just briefly recap the story of Isis and Osiris, because it's so encoded with the meaning of the precessional cycle and helping us understand this profound time that we're in now. And I just want to say that the book Hamlet's Mill, written by two scholars, guides us in understanding that these ancient myths from around the globe were encoding their understanding of star wisdom to guide us in understanding these larger cycles of change that we're in. But the story of Isis and Osiris is the story of these two rulers in ancient Egypt who held in balance that wisdom of the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine. They were these benevolent rulers who helped the people stay in balance, in right harmony with all that is. However, their brother Set, who is the deity about the energy of time and chaos and disorder, became very jealous of his brother Osiris and set out to destroy him, to take over his power. And he made a box and he brought it to this great banquet. And he wanted to gift this beautiful box to whoever would fit perfectly inside. And he designed it so that only Osiris would fit in this box. Osiris gets in, and Set slams the lid shut, and with his 72 conspirators, again, this is a reference to the precessional cycle, he sends the box down the river Nile to get rid of Osiris. Isis, in her love for Osiris, searches high and low until she finds the box and opens it up and helps Osiris, who's been killed by Set in this whole experience, to revive, come back to life, and then he impregnates her with their son, Horus. Set, in his anger, comes back, finds Osiris's body, cuts him into 14 pieces, scatters him far and wide. And again, Isis seeks out all of those lost parts of him, pieces him back together, makes him whole, and then supports him in becoming the god of the underworld. So it so shows that way in which Isis holds that energy of eternity and supporting Osiris in his own experience of death, resurrection, death, rebirth. And he then holds that wisdom of how we move through those cycles individually and collectively. Here's an image of Isis in her bird form as a kite hawk, reviving Osiris, resurrecting him. And interestingly enough, in ancient Egypt, the kite hawk is associated with the constellation Cygnus, which is this constellation that guides us in flying in our journey after death back to the galactic center, back to source, to be revived and resurrected. So you can see how this story relates to the processional cycle and our journey individually and collectively through these times of transformation of life, death, rebirth, and our shifts in consciousness. These stars are so important in ancient Egypt, and we know that the pyramids on the Giza Plateau are in alignment with the stars of Orion's belt. The Great Pyramid has star shafts that are in alignment with Orion and Sirius, and then with some of the circumpolar stars. My book, Finding Our Center, is about the meaning of the processional cycle and how, as we move through these different ages, it's guiding us in different phases of our journey of human consciousness. And as you journey to ancient Egypt, you see some sites in ancient Egypt, like the Sphinx, and I believe the Great Pyramid, that date back 12,000 years ago, at the time of the last huge shift of earth changes and of human consciousness around 10,000 BCE. And the Sphinx was built at the time that the stars of Leo were rising before the spring equinox. So the lioness was facing the lion, and again, in ancient Egypt, holding that balance of the energies of the earth and sky to be in right harmony. Now, our modern understanding of history dates back to about 3000 BCE. We see our modern historical era as being this past 5,000 years, when in actuality that isn't true. When you tap into some of these advanced ancient cultures like ancient Egypt that date back thousands of years ago. But our modern understanding starts with the age of Taurus, which was about 4,000 to 2,000 BCE, and was a time when the goddess was very honored. We honored the sacredness of the earth. This is the time in ancient Egypt that the temple of Hathor, the cow goddess, began to be built. We moved from that time of honoring the sacred feminine and the sacredness of the earth to the age of Aries, 2000 BCE up to our current era, where we moved into Aries ruled by Mars, the energy of the sacred masculine and the meaning of our hero's journey of moving through this experience of mortality. But unfortunately, we got caught in the shadow side of the age of Aries and into the movement into patriarchy and the power over paradigms that we're continuing to deal with in this time. Around 0 of the current era up to 2000 of this era, we were in the age of Pisces, where we were meant to correct that out of balanced energy of the age of Aries by coming back into that mystical awareness, Pisces, of our oneness with all that is. Buddha and Christ were guiding us back into that awareness that we are soul selves having a human experience. We are a part of eternity, but we carried those power over paradigms through the age of Pisces. And now as we're moving into the age of Aquarius, we're needing to clear that, come back into balance, take in the living waters of the water bearer, guiding us back into the remembrance of who we are and of how we can come back into right balance, right harmony with all that is. One of the other things that's extraordinary is with Sirius, our binary star, guiding us through this journey, and Orion showing us how we can live that and embody that in our experience here on Earth. As you move through the precessional cycle, Orion shifts from 12,000 years ago being at its highest declination in this relationship with the horizon, and across the last 12,000 years, it's grown higher and higher in the sky until it's now at its highest level in the sky, literally showing us how we're in a time of ascension to rise into this higher consciousness and come back into balance and harmony. And that awareness of unity consciousness, our interconnectedness with all that is. I think it's also significant that opposite the sky, opposite Orion, is Ophiuchus, the great healer, who is the serpent bearer, holding the most ancient image of the sacred feminine, the serpent. So he is symbolic of that reweaving of the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine to come back into balance. And from the perspective in ancient Egypt, Ma'at, that deity, actually, for the ancient Egyptians, the deities were the Neteru, the archetypal energies of the cosmos. And Ma'at symbolized that principle of everything is meant to be in right harmony, right balance with all that is. We are part of the interconnectedness of all of life in the consciousness of our cosmos. And when we come back into alignment with our soul selves, then we remember how to come back into right balance, right relationship within ourselves, with each other, with all of life. And that is the process that we're in right now. I think another piece connected to that that's important is Barbara Hand Clow, who I have a great deal of respect for, internationally known astrologer, writer. But she's written a book. I think it's now called Planetary Awakening, but it used to be called Catastrophobia. Do you know that book, Jocelyn?
Yes, I do.
Part of what she talks about in that book is because we do go through this precessional cycle and these periods of radical earth changes and shifts in consciousness, like happened 12,000 years ago with the fall of Atlantis, the floods, the earthquakes, the massive reset on the planet. Because we go through those times of trauma, we all carry that trauma, that PTSD, in our cellular memory. And part of what she highlights is we not only need to heal individually, but heal that collective PTSD, or we will tend to be caught in that fear and trauma pattern and create the very thing that we fear. So I think as we're in this time of accelerated change, we're also needing to heal that collective trauma to realize this is the time we can be in an evolutionary leap, a healing and awakening, and not a crisis.